Hello everyone, Neil Tappin here from Golf Monthly, and welcome to this video in which we're looking at 7 essential golf gear rules. This is everything you need to know about your equipment. So from the clubs that you carry to things like rangefinders, the golf balls that you carry, and also what to do if one of your golf clubs gets damaged during a round of golf. I'm going to be joined in this video by Golf Monthly's rules guru, Jeremy Ellwood. Right, let's head out onto the golf course here at West Hill and look at our 7 essential golf gear rules. Okay, so number 7 on our list relates to those bits of technology, those devices that you use that give you distance information during your round of golf. Almost certainly most golfers are using these now. Jez, what's the thing that people need to be wary of?
Well, I would be one of the ones that isn't using them, a little bit old school. So, but these things have come into the game over the last decade, perhaps, and while they were originally outlawed and had to be okayed by local rule, that's not the case anymore. But there are still 1 or 2 things you have to be wary of.
Yes.
You know a little bit more about the latest gadgets than I do. What are those things?
Well, so for instance, the distance measuring device I use is a laser, and it's a Bushnell Tor V4. Okay, and this is it. And it gives you, in this mode here, the slope. So this means that you can zap the flag and it will tell you an adjusted yardage. So it will give you a yardage plus or minus the slope that you're looking to play up or you're playing down. Now that's a really helpful bit of advice, but under the rules of golf, you're not allowed to use that. So in a competition, you'd have to just flick that down and turn the slope off, and then you're fine.
Yep, so elevation is taboo still?
Yes, and there's also, I know that there are other devices out there. There are some smartwatches that give sort of like virtual caddy information that really supply you with that little bit more extra information. They can even, because they're tracking the shots that you hit on the golf course, they know how far you hit every club in the bag. They can start to suggest which club to hit in certain scenarios. Again, factoring in things like slope. Again, you'd have to turn that off if you were using them in competition.
In competition, yeah. Okay, so that's good. And there are things about wind speed as well, aren't there, which we won't go into too much here, but you can't take something out onto the course that measures wind speed.
No, which might seem a little bit out there, but as technology starts to grow, these are the sorts of things that you're going to experience. So it's just one of those things. You need to be wary that there are some rules relating to sort of what features and benefits you can use from certain gadgets out on the golf course. Just be wary particularly of the one that measures slope. You're not allowed to use that in competition. Okay, so number 6 on the list relates to adjustability in golf clubs. And Jez, the driver that you've got in your hands there can be adjusted in a whole host of different ways, but you need to be slightly careful with that adjustability. Why?
Well, basically because you can do all the adjusting you like in practice and in friendly rounds, but in a competition round you can't change the playing characteristics of the club once the round has started. And if you do so, you're going to run into a spot of bother. What do you mean by a spot of bother? This sounds ominous.
If
you get to the 4th hole and you think, oh, I've hit everything sideways right, I'm going to just tweak this so I can hit it straighter and change the club, you will end up being disqualified once you use that club again.
Ouch.
If you adjust it and then suddenly remember, oh, I can't do that, can I? And put it back to exactly how it was before, to the best of your ability, you'll be okay as long as you haven't hit a shot with it.
You can. Okay, well that's good to know. So I think one area where this probably happens more than it should or is likely to happen is if you've been to the driving range and you've been tinkering with the setup of your driver. Let's say you've moved the weights forward to take all the spin off and then you forget to move it back. You get out to, as Jez said, the 4th hole and then you realise everything's falling out of the air. I need to put the weights back. You can't do that. If you do, you're going to get disqualified, as Jez said. There's also one other little
thing which probably doesn't affect many of us, but if you're playing in an event where play gets suspended and carried over, perhaps even to another day or later on in the day, you can't, during that suspension, change the characteristics of the club that you'd had set for the round, because the round is still ongoing.
Yes.
And if you do that, which would be easy to do, wouldn't it? The following morning you come out and you think, I'm not hitting it very well, I'll just tweak. You can't do that until that round is completed.
It's completed. So there you have it. Everything you need to know about the adjustability of golf clubs. You're unlikely to come a cropper with this one, but still worth knowing nonetheless.
Got some height on it. I don't know what that was. 54 degrees, Tappers.
Yes, unfortunately though, Jez, you know what club I hit, but you've sadly broken the rules there because you've been rummaging around in my bag when you shouldn't have been to find out what club I'm hitting.
This is true. Yes, I have breached the rules there. You're not allowed to ask advice, so I wouldn't be allowed to say to tappers, what club did you just hit there? And rummaging around in his bag is deemed to be advice through the back door, I suppose, really.
Yeah.
I've looked for the gap, found he's hit his 54-degree wedge, and got that advice without actually asking him for it. That is considered a breach of the rules, just as asking for advice.
Yeah, so exactly. So you're not allowed to say to somebody, you know, you both stood on a par 3, what did you hit 7-iron there? You're not allowed to do that. But you are allowed to ask them what distance it is that right?
Distance is considered to be a matter of public information rather than advice. It's a sort of a matter of fact, and therefore it's not considered advice. Whether you do it or not is another thing.
But yet knowing what club someone's hit, that's that little bit more of a nugget of information that could really tell you something that was that much more valuable to you. Yeah. It's not allowed in the rules. Make sure you don't do it. Number 4 on our list is probably the most important one for you to know, and it relates to the number of golf clubs you're allowed to carry. Jez, what is that number?
The number is 14, that's the magic number. It's a maximum number.
Okay, so I can carry 13,
yes,
but I can't carry 15.
No.
What happens if I accidentally do carry a 15? So let's say I've been to the driving range, I've been testing out another driver, and I've accidentally left it in the bag. I've not hit a shot from it, but I get to the 5th tee, and I realise I've got 15 clubs in there. What happens then?
Well, the first thing you must do is declare a club out of play.
Right.
And you do that by either telling the people you're playing with or perhaps turning it upside down in your bag.
Yes.
You can't then use that club for the rest of the round. But I'm afraid you're still penalised, and in stroke play it's 2 strokes for each hole at which a breach occurred. But a maximum of 4 strokes in total.
Okay, fine.
So it's still quite punchy, but it's not 36 strokes.
It's not terminal. You might just be able to get into the buffer zone if you play really well.
Yes. In match play, it's a hole for each hole at which a breach has occurred. Again, maximum of 2 holes.
Right, fine.
So the match score would be adjusted by 2 holes. Yeah.
Okay, and now there is an important distinction, isn't there,
Yes,
Jez, between the 2 different types of stroke play that you're likely to play. So medal versus Stableford. In Stableford, it's slightly different, isn't it?
It is, and the reason for that is you could effectively get away scot-free if the two strokes had to be added to a hole where you'd blobbed it anyway.
Yes.
So you made a 6, becomes an 8, doesn't make any difference. You get no points.
We're going to get 0 anyway.
So what they do in Stableford is you get to the end of the round and they deduct 2 points at each hole where a breach occurred, up to a maximum of 4 points.
Right.
So you get to the final Stableford score and then deduct either 2 or 4 points.
Which does make sense.
It does make sense, because otherwise you could get away with no penalty for something you're supposed to be penalised for.
Yeah. And
I think the other thing it's worth saying is you can't carry 17 clubs from your car to the first tee, and then when you get to the first tee say, right now I've got here, I'm going to take these 3 out of play.
Not allowed to do
that. No, these rules cover breaches that occur once you're out on the golf course. You can't knowingly get to the first tee and say, I'm taking these 3 out of play today.
Yeah. Okay, well, I mean, having 14 clubs in your bag, it's one of the most basic rules of golf. It's something that every golfer needs to know. If you're playing in a competition, my advice would be stand on the first tee and just do a quick count. Make sure that it doesn't come to 15, because if it does, it can really cost you. And it's one of those really silly things that you can do that we've probably all done at some point in our golfing lives that you end up regretting, end up costing you shots. So make sure you steer clear of that. Okay, so I've hit my ball into a gorse bush. Hopefully you can see it just behind me there. Not a completely uncommon scenario for me. I now need to take a drop, Jez, and for that I need to use my golf equipment.
Yes.
So this is a golf equipment related rule
Yes.
that actually people might get wrong potentially, because there was a change that came into play when the revisions got made in 2019.
Yeah, I mean, the changes were basically to outlaw you using a long putter to gain a slight advantage when measuring club lengths away from there. So the rules now define a club length as the longest club you're carrying in your bag for a given round other than the putter. So typically this is going to be your driver at whatever they are now, 44, 45 inches, I don't know, something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
And you must measure out using the longest club you're carrying. Now, you don't get a driver's length if you're not carrying a driver that day. So if you're only carrying a 3-wood or a hybrid, that is your club length for that round. So, you know, small point, but if you've decided your woods are misbehaving so badly you're going to leave them at home, you are doing yourself out of that times 2 when you're dropping. That might be the difference between getting clear and not getting clear. So just bear that in mind. Even if the driver's misbehaving, you might want to stick it in the bag just for measuring purposes.
Yeah, so whenever you're taking a drop on the golf course, for whatever reason, in this scenario it's an unplayable ball, use your driver to mark it out, give yourself exactly the maximum that you can have within the rules, and you might just get away with your score intact. Okay, so number 2 on our list relates to what happens if you damage a club during a round of golf. Damage can happen for a few different reasons. You might hit a shot without realising there's a rock or a stone underneath your ball and cause the club to be damaged that way. Alternatively, it could be a peak of anger, Jez, it has been known. What can you do and what can't you do if you've damaged a club?
Okay, what you can do is carry on using that club for the rest of the round now, regardless of how the damage was caused. Even if it's just a foot of shaft and a club head, you could use it for getting out from under trees or whatever. You know, obviously take a bit of care with the shaft.
Yeah, make sure you don't.
But you can carry on using it. That's one thing you can do. You can, in very rare circumstances, get it replaced if you can do so without unreasonable delay. And that would be if outside influences or someone other than you or your caddy cause the damage. So we'll just, maybe there's a cliff and a rock has fallen and damaged one of your clubs. Possibly.
Unlikely. Or if you put the club on the ground and then one of your fellow competitors has trodden on it and snapped the shaft. In that scenario, you can get it replaced, but only, as Jez said, if you don't delay play. It might be a golf course where the 9th hole goes past the clubhouse and the car park's right there and you've got a spare putter in the bag, in the boot of your car. In that scenario, you can replace. Otherwise, that's pretty unlikely.
That's a bit niche, and it's also permissible to get the club repaired or restored to its original condition if you can do so without unreasonably delaying play, which again at club level is going to be pretty unlikely.
A tour player might be able to do that with the extra resources they have around them, but for us, that's unlikely to happen. I guess the main piece of advice here is that if you do damage a golf club, accidentally or not, don't worry too much. You can carry on using it during the round of golf. Just be a bit careful you don't hurt yourself or anybody else. So number 1 on the list relates to your choice of golf ball. And actually, Jez, there's a lot of talk in the game about the bifurcation of the rules. So whether or not there should be one set of rules for professionals and another set of rules for amateurs. And there's always been this sort of drive to make sure that bifurcation doesn't really happen. We like to be playing off the same sort of level playing field as the pros. But actually, there is one rule that's slightly different for the pros than it is for the amateurs.
Yeah, it is a kind of bifurcation.
It's a small difference, but it's important, I think.
You and I, club golf, we can use one ball on the first hole, different ball on the second hole. We can change the ball from brand to type to whatever. Yeah, I can go from using a Titleist, I've got an AVX in my hand here, and then if I'm not playing very well, I can swap into something that's doesn't feel quite as good, or potentially go for a distance ball on a par 5 and go for a softer ball on a par 3. That's fine for an amateur. Yeah, between holes you can change. Pro can't do that because they have to use the same brand and model of ball throughout. Yeah, so they would have to use their Pro V1 all the way through their round of golf. They would. That's through a clause called the one ball condition, which really only applies to professional and top amateur events. Yes. Now, another question I've got for you, Jez, is what happens if I've played very badly, right, and I've got to the 17th tee and I've hit my 5th shot out of bounds and I've run out of balls. Can I ask to have one of yours, or is that permissible or not? You can ask your fellow players if they would mind letting you lose another ball. There's absolutely no problem with that, and of course with the one ball condition not in force at club level, it doesn't really matter what they give you, and by that stage you probably don't care. They're probably unlikely to give you something that's any good. No, and pros can do that as well, as long as the guy they're playing with is playing the same brand and model of ball. Yeah. Okay, so I think the thing here to remember is if you're watching TV, if you're watching professional golf on the telly, you might hear them saying that they have to keep the same model and brand of golf ball in play all the way through 18 holes. That's true for them. It's not the same for us. It's not the same at club level. You can have a range of different golf balls in your bag and you can use them out on the golf course. Whether or not that's good for your game, that's maybe up for debate, but it's worth remembering that you don't have to use the same brand and model all the way through. So there you have it. That's our list of 7 essential golf gear rules. Guys, what do you think? Please do leave comments below. Is there anything that you think we've missed from that list? Anything that you've come across on the golf course? We would be interested to hear your thoughts. But for now, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.